Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, May the 2nd, 2022. We only have one official item on the agenda tonight. However, I know there is another topic we need to discuss this evening, but the first topic that we have on the list is street preservation for 2022. I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Always this time of year, we bring to the council staff recommendations for the upcoming season's street preservation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Krass for explanations.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Want to give you a little bit of background of first of our street maintenance program. So, our street maintenance program consists of three major components: mill and overlay, which is the traditional grind off the surface, replace it with a new asphalt surface. Microsurfacing, which is a surface treatment. It's typically about 3/8 of an inch thick. It's a polymer-based asphalt with aggregate in it, and its primary purpose is to seal up all the cracks and everything that's on the pavement surface. Moisture is our biggest enemy with streets. We want to seal up the cracks as much as we can, because as moisture gets through the asphalt into the subgrade, it just leads to further pavement deterioration. So by microsurfacing, we seal off the surface, seal up some of the larger cracks, the smaller cracks. It does not necessarily, it's a surface treatment, so it's not rebuilding the surface, it's not necessarily smoothing out all the ruts and everything that's on the road. It doesn't really impact the rideability the same way that a mill and overlay does, but it is about 30% cheaper. And so we are able, by doing that, we are able to stretch out the time between when we microsurface and when we have to mill and overlay a street.
Mike, how long would that generally extend the life of that road surface?
You can typically do it about 3 cycles. And so that's like 15 years, assuming that you've got a mill and overlay every 10 years or so for a typical road. You can really stretch that to 15 or 20 years before you have to mill and overlay.
Okay.
We also, in conjunction with that, we do crack sealing, which is the black stripes that you see on the roads. And then with all of these programs, we will go in and do some selective patching in the roads as part of the program. We also have a curb replacement program, and this year we've added two new programs based on some work that our interns and Trent Salisbury did last summer when they were televising storm sewers, which is culvert replacement, and then also they did a comprehensive review of all the ADA ramps, so we are incorporating that into our program as well. So this year's program, if council will recall, several years ago they adopted a policy or a program to do complete streets. So whenever we're working on a street, whenever possible, if it's mill and overlay, we coordinate with the curb and gutter replacement and anything else that we do. We just did that recently in the Silver Lake area, where we did that drainage improvement. We did it last year on parts of Fox Ridge Drive. So what you have in front of you is, in the first map is showing the proposed curb and gutter replacement program for this year. We're doing Old Mill, and then we are doing I believe it's Calico and Heritage. So we're doing Old Paint, Calico, and Heritage, which is shown on the first map. So we're seeing some significant cost increases in curb and gutter. Curb and gutter used to be about $20 a foot in and out to replace it. It's now $29 per linear foot. So we're seeing some increases there. So based on our historic our bids received and that we track, the budget for the curb program this year is $600,000. Our estimate for the work that's shown on the first map is $598,000. So we are pushing right up against our allocated funds. The mill and overlay project we've programmed just a little over the budget is $800,000. We've programmed $842,000, but a lot of that is related to patching that we can adjust if necessary. So on the second Second map is our proposed mill and overlay program, which is shown on the map in magenta. The green streets, which are also have mill and overlay with curbs, and in particular, the one Heritage and Crest also have some storm sewer culverts that we are going to be replacing. In blue is the proposed microsurface streets, which is Lucy Webb and Fox Ridge Drive. We're also showing, if you recall at the last council meeting, we are receiving funds through MARC, and that the segment we're recommending for that is Madison Street from Lucy Webb Road to the roundabout. However, those funds most likely will not be available this construction season. It'll be for 2023. The last sheet you have is the first. This year we budgeted $50,000 for ADA ramps. What's indicated by the red dots is these are areas that currently do not have truncated domes on the ramps, so we will be going in and putting in a plate, like it's kind of the red plastic plate you see that screws down, and we're doing that first because that really is those are completely out of compliance where the other ramps need repair. We have programmed our budget was $50,000 and our estimate is just $49,000. We also have unallocated funds from last year's street preservation in the amount of $109,000. Council has always asked that we program and maximize those dollars. What we would like to do this year is do some patching on Metfield Lane, North Fox Ridge Drive, and Hubach Hill Road, and then use those funds and roll them into this year's street preservation program. Also found when we were looking at this out in Ward Park Place, there is as the neighborhood builds up and there's more traffic, something's come to light. There's a little bit of a sight distance issue near the pool. We'll be recommending at the time we bring forward the contract award for this, we'll be recommending that we establish a four-way stop at Ripley Court and put in a crosswalk so folks can get to the pool and folks have a way to get across that street and then to the park. Also got an inquiry from Tom Engert with Morning View. There's some damaged curb there. I'm going to be coordinating. He thinks it may have been from some of our snow plows. I'm going to be coordinating with him to get those identified and roll them into one of our programs. With that concludes the staff report. If council concurs, we are prepared to get this out to bid this week.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Krass. Good report. I think at a previous, probably a year or so ago, you gave a presentation similar to this, but also included there's a specific process and maybe even a program or system that you use to kind of say that the life of this particular road, the serviceability of this road dictates when it needs to be overlaid, when it needs to have surfacing, and things of that sort. You're still doing that same program
Yes,
to come up with this,
yes,
this
we have.
plan?
Yeah.
It's not
So
just-
thank you. All of this is based on we go out and we examine the streets. There's a systematic scoring system that we use, and and it's based from 100 being a very good street to 0 being rubble. And we select the streets there, based on the score. It has the appropriate method or recommended method of maintenance, and that's how we select the streets each year for the program.
And I believe that also allows us the ability to kind of better plan and forecast the funding necessary, so we're not just kind of reacting to, we kind of have a very scheduled and structured maintenance plan.
Yes, and as part of that program, it actually has a pavement decay curve that as we put in more data, it adapts and then recognizes and can project future deterioration of the network.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good report, Mr. Crass. You changed the design of our curbs, and I take it that that's working extremely well. That's going to continue. And the next question I had was, on the curb replacement, there are times you have to go in and do some epoxy or patching or whatever. Does that still goes on, doesn't it?
To the extent that budget allows, we do. Operations and maintenance does some patching. They are really getting stretched. We between probably the highest priority we have is the sidewalk repairs, and then we program in the curb repairs as we can. We do also try and do some patching as part of the actual curb replacement program, but as you can see, we are really pushing up against our budget with the program we've outlined here.
But the new curbs are going to help.
Yes, I think we're seeing a lot. Historically, we have seen better performance on the what we refer to as the high back curb rather than the rollover curb. And actually, we no longer allow the rollover curb in any of the new construction.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
You were going too fast for me a little bit there. On the mill and overlay, you said we budgeted 800,000, and then what was the actual amount that you thought we were going to be at?
We overprogrammed a little bit because a lot of that is patching, so we've programmed $842,000.
Anyone else? Everybody's good? Oh, Mr. Holman.
Yeah, this is, I think, probably going to roll into when we get to budget discussion later this year, but I think it's been, Mr. Fearborn, was it 5 years ago we went from 600,000 during budget discussions to 800,000 a year for street preservation?
That's correct on that, and at the exact same time, we realized that curb is also a stormwater conveyance issue as far as hard dollars are concerned. So we increased that from 400 to 600,000, sir.
So my comment would be, we're probably at a time where it's been 5 years, we know inflation has gone up, costs have gone up during that time. Obviously, there's been a huge increase in the cost of curbs alone. It's probably something worthy of consideration during budget time of whether or not we need to add a little bit more money into street preservation program, I believe, sir.
You know, we talked a little bit about that last year and didn't really act on it because it was still during COVID, and we were kind of wanting to preserve some of that funds for emergencies, which worked out for us, by the way. Anyone else? Mr. Towns, did you have anything additional?
It was related but unrelated. As I'm listening to the conversation about street preservations and I hear previous agendas regarding our community growing, how is our public works staffing to maintain this? Is it we're starting to stretch our staff to the point where they're going to have to do overtime to maintain these streets until we are able to hire new? And that's probably better served for the other portion.
Yes, for the next item.
Yes.
Yes.
So while
For
we
the
get to
other
that,
item on our
you can
agenda.
think through that, and I'll ask it at other.
There you go. Anyone else about street pres? If not, we'll move on to the other item, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had previously brought forward to the City Council in work session format the potential for another run at the use tax, and had brought up the pros and cons of an August date, pros and cons of a November date, April, kind of laid all of that out there. Single Councilmember Holman, had suggested that we go with the August date, but that meeting was more informational. However, the time is now upon us. If the council wishes to go for an August date, the first reading of that needs to be in front of you all next Monday night. Had a few weeks now to digest all of our information. Staff is looking to see if all of the same facts are still in place. We're still short personnel. The report is still valid, to answer your question, council member. And If the council would like to do that, 2 weeks from tonight, Ms. Harmer is prepared to, actually in work session format, go through the very detailed, you may have noticed she was sitting there with a stack of papers in front of her, the very detailed process by which we would be informing the public of this particular ballot issues. Kind of an overarching item just for the council is we would still be emphasizing public safety personnel. That's not that we are dropping the other personnel out of this, but a more generalized approach targeting that particular area is what staff would be recommending to the council. With that, however, before we put it on, we want to make sure that the council even wants to entertain the idea tonight with thumbs up, thumbs down as to whether you're or not to even put it on the agenda on Monday night.
Were we able to get a feel from the chamber? Has she talked with them yet? What was their response?
So she will, at the next board meeting, give a formal presentation, given how we're going to proceed with it, what those funds would be used for. A general discussion came up at the last board meeting, and there seemed to be a majority support of the board. It's not been formally pushed to the board for a vote of the board on whether or not to publicly endorse it, but there seemed to be a general feel for that. Yeah. Nothing official yet, though.
And from another quarter, staff is hearing a possible interest in assisting us further. Obviously, staff has to be very careful about any approach to anybody, but we actually have people engaging in discussion with us, which would be, honestly, kind of twice as powerful if we're getting an endorsement or a we support this from the chamber, and another group is going, in a positive direction on it. That's a very powerful approach.
Did you have something else?
A quick question. Do we know for sure if Belton is doing theirs?
They are.
They are.
For sure in August?
Yes.
I talked to the mayor over there, and they're definitely putting on the August agenda.
And there must be discussion about the synergy, because I heard from the interim city, or the acting city manager, about whether or not we were going to be going for that.
That's right.
So just a check for clarification question. So our position has to be, by state law, informational only. We're telling the people what we want or what we need, and we're providing information on that. The chamber could endorse the project, and then there's always the possibility that an individual or individual group could form their own political action committee and support or not be in favor of this as well, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
I think we had a majority of the group that gave you the thumbs up on that, so we'll move forward with that for an agenda item. Okay. Anything else under other? Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session for real estate acquisition matters as authorized by RSMO 610.021, parent 2.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Any further discussion? Well, I guess there's not one. Can I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Councilmember Wills?
Yes.
Councilmember Forster?
Pleasant?
Councilmember Burke? Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson? Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Very good.
Make sure, we'll just stay here. Just make sure the TV's off over there first before we